The sun hung low over the cracked earth of the Arizona badlands, a merciless orb that turned the world into a furnace of dust and despair. Jack Harlan, a weathered cowboy with a scar running from his temple to his jaw like a river of regret, urged his horse forward through the dried-up bed of what used to be the Rio Seco. He'd been riding for days, fleeing the ghosts of a life he'd burned to the ground, a failed ranch, a wife lost to fever, and a bottle that had claimed too many nights. But nothing prepared him for the sight that shattered the silence. 3 bodies sprawled naked in the mud, their skin caked in the river's parched remnants, limbs twisted like forgotten roots. They were native women, their long black hair matted, with silt, eyes closed against the world. Jack's heart seized. Bandits, heatstroke, or worse. He dismounted, his boots sinking into the cracked clay, and approached with the caution of a man who'd seen too much death. He knelt beside the nearest one, her chest still, no breath stirring the dust. Dead, all of them, he thought, until one arm rose slowly from the mud, fingers trembling like a prayer reaching for the sky. Jack froze, his hand hovering over his revolver out of habit. But there was no threat here, only desperation. The arm belonged to the youngest of the 3, a girl no older than 20, her eyes fluttering open to reveal depths of exhaustion and fear. "Water," she whispered in broken English, her voice a rasp against the wind. Jack's canteen was half empty, but he didn't hesitate. He poured a trickle into her mouth, watching as she swallowed greedily, her sisters stirring faintly beside her. They were Apache, he realized. From the markings on their discarded beads nearby, survivors of the endless skirmishes that plagued these lands. As he helped them sit up, wrapping them in his spare blankets despite the heat, their stories began to unfold in halting words and gestures. The eldest, Maria, with lines etched deep into her face like canyons, spoke of a raid on their village. By white settlers hungry for land, it fled with nothing, crossing the desert for days, until the riverbed trapped them in its deceptive mud, sucking away their strength as the sun baked them alive. The women, Maria, her sister Alina, and the youngest Lila, were bound by blood and loss. Maria had lost a husband to the settlers' bullets, Lina a mother to the same endless cycle of vengeance, and Lila, innocent and fierce, carried the weight of being the last hope for their family's line. Jack listened as he built a makeshift camp under a cluster of mesquite trees, sharing his meager supplies of jerky and beans. He wasn't one for words. His own past a shadow he kept locked away. But something in their eyes, resilient, unbroken, cracked open the vault of his soul. "Why help us?" Alina asked that first night, her voice suspicious as she clutched the blanket around her. Jack stared into the fire, the flames dancing like memories. "Seen enough dying in my time," he muttered. "Ain't a din to it, but deep down, it was more. It's redemption for the times he'd turned away, for the bottle that had made him a coward." When his wife needed him most, as the stars wheeled overhead, Jack learned their full plight. Their tribe, scattered after the raid, had sent them ahead to seek aid from distant kin across the border. But the desert was unforgiving, riddled with patrols of lawmen who saw natives as threats, and bandits who preyed on the vulnerable. Women had stripped across what they thought was shallow water, only to sink into the mud as dehydration claimed them. Jack, with his horse and knowledge of the trails, became their unlikely guardian. He rigged slings from his saddlebags too. "Carry the weakest, Lila," who still trembled from fever. They set out at dawn, the badlands stretching like an endless maze of red rock and thorny scrub. The journey was slow, each step a battle against the sun's glare and the gnawing hunger that turned bellies to stone. Challenges mounted like storm clouds on the horizon. On the second day, they encountered a flash flood rare in this drought-stricken land, but deadly. The dry arroyo they'd chosen for shelter suddenly roared to life with muddy water, sweeping away their campfire and nearly dragging Alina under. Jack dove in without thinking, his strong arms hauling her to higher ground as the torrent raged. Soaked and shivering, they huddled together that night, Elena's gratitude breaking through her wariness. "You fight like one of us," she said, her hand brushing his scarred cheek. Jack shrugged it off, but inside, the touch stirred something long dormant. A reminder that he wasn't as broken as he believed. Emotional wounds ran deeper than the physical ones. Around the campfire on the third night, as they shared stories, under a blanket of stars, Maria spoke of her husband's final moments, gunned down defending their home. Tears carved clean paths down her mud-streaked face. "He died whispering our ancestors' songs," she said, her voice trembling. Jack, moved by her pain, shared his own, how he'd failed his wife, Sarah, letting drink numb him as she wasted away from illness. "I could have saved her," he confessed, his voice cracking for the first time in years. "But I chose the bottle instead." Lila, the quiet one, reached out and placed a hand on his. "The past is a ghost," she said softly, echoing words from her people's wisdom. "But ghosts can teach us to live." In that moment, bonds formed, fragile as spider silk, but strengthening with each shared vulnerability. Yet danger lurked beyond their circle of light. On the fourth day, they crested a ridge to find a posse of settlers. The same men who'd raided the women's village camped below, their rifles glinting in the sun. Jack's heart pounded. He recognized their leader, a burly man named Harlan. Crow, no relation, but a name that twisted like a knife. Crow was notorious for his hatred of savages, as he called them, and he'd claim any bounty on native scalps. The group hid in the rocks, but Lila's feverish cough betrayed them. Gunshots echoed as the posse charged up the slope. Jack fired back, his revolver barking in defense, while Maria and Alina armed themselves with rocks and branches. In the chaos, Alina took a graze to the arm, blood blooming like a desert flower. Jack charged forward, tackling Crow and wrestling him to the ground. "This ain't your land to take," Jack growled, pinning the man. But it was Maria who ended the standoff, her knife at Crow's throat. "Enough blood," she said, her eyes fierce. "Go and tell your kind. We are not ghosts to be." Erased, the posse fled, tails between their legs, but the victory was bittersweet. Elena's wound festered, slowing their pace, and doubt crept in. Jack questioned his path. Why risk his life for strangers? Lila, sensing his turmoil, confronted him under the moonlit sky. "You see us as weak," she said, "but we see you as lost. Together, we find the way." Her words pierced him, reigniting a purpose he'd thought dead. He tended Elena's wound with herbs from Maria's knowledge, blending his frontier medicine with their ancient remedies. As she healed, so did the fractures. In their spirits, deeper into the journey, personal revelations deepened their connections. Jack admitted his scar came from a bar fight where he defended a native boy from drunken miners, a rare act of heroism in his otherwise selfish life. Maria shared tales of her ancestors, warriors who communed with the spirits of the land, teaching Lila and Alina the songs that bound them. These stories wove a tapestry of shared humanity, bridging the chasm between cowboy and native. Challenges persisted. A sandstorm blinded them for hours, forcing them to huddle in a cave where fears surfaced. Jack confessed his fear of dying alone. Maria, her dread of her culture fading into dust. Through it all, resolutions came not from force, but from understanding. Jack teaching them to read trail signs, the women showing him how to listen to the wind's whispers. As they neared the border, a final trial loomed, a treacherous canyon guarded by federal agents wary of illegal crossings. Exhausted, the group devised a plan. Jack would distract the patrols while the women slipped through a hidden pass Maria knew from childhood legends. But as night fell, Lila refused to leave him. "We go together," she insisted, her arm, the one that had risen from the mud, now strong enough to hold his hand. In a tense standoff, Jack confronted the lead agent, a young man with a badge but a hesitant heart. "These women ain't criminals," Jack argued, his voice steady. "They're survivors, like you and me." Moved by the plea, or perhaps the sight of the determined group, the agent looked away, allowing them passage. They crossed into safety as dawn broke, the horizon painted in hues of hope. The women's kin awaited, a small band of Apache who enveloped them in embraces and chants. Jack stood apart, his horse saddled, ready to ride on. But Maria approached, placing a beaded necklace around his neck, a symbol of their bond. "You found us in the mud," she said, "but we lifted you from yours." Lena nodded, her wound bandaged, but her spirit whole. Lila, eyes shining, hugged him fiercely. Remember, Cowboy, one arm rising can change everything. Jack rode away, but he was no longer the lone wanderer. The Badlands felt less empty, the sun less cruel. He'd learned that redemption isn't found in solitude, but in the connections we forge across divides. In helping others rise from the mud, we pull ourselves up too. And in a world fractured by hate, a single act of compassion can echo like a river reborn, inspiring us all to reach out, one arm at a time,